Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
It's always about the money. It always has been about the money. And it's always about Russian money. I think you're going to start to see stories about Saudi money. Donald Trump went bankrupt in the mid-90s. Donald Trump couldn't get money from anywhere. You have Trump Tower filled with apartment after apartment of LLCs of Russians. Donald Trump has been owned by the Russians for a long time. Donald Trump has been owned by Vladimir Putin. This is the first time we're seeing a line. It's not just about collusion. It's not about helping him win the election. It's about the money. It's about business. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I really believe even post-Trump presidency, you're going to see the Trump business empire being picked apart for the next 20 years. It's basically built as a criminal enterprise. As far as Michael, I've been speaking to Michael over the last few days. I've spoken to Michael today. Michael, it's been an interesting arc for Michael. Michael, obviously, as we know, when we've talked a lot about the show, was an emotional, personal ally of Donald Trump. It wasn't just business. He felt like a part of the family, and obviously said he would take bullets for him, and obviously did take bullets. What's going to come out question, was he told to lie or did he lie on his own? I think that's going to be an interesting question that's going to come forward. Michael, we've watched him turn. We watched him all of a sudden say, you know what, no, I need to help myself. I need to help my family. I need to help my country. Michael today, as I spoke to him, sounded very different than I've spoken to him in the last 2 years. He finally feels that he's kind of on the other side now. Yes, he's made mistakes, and yes, he's going to pay for them. But going from being seen as a bad guy to maybe a guy that's trying to do right thing, maybe not a bad guy, a good guy, and he knows he made mistakes. And
Are you saying Michael Cohen conveyed to you today that he's proud of this chapter?
He's beyond proud of this chapter. He really feels he's done the right thing, and he really feels he's going to be the linchpin. And obviously, so does Robert Mueller. You know, if you think about the sentence that he got a 6-month sentence to be served concurrently with so that means he got nothing. He basically pled to lying to Congress, and Bob Mueller basically gave him no penalty. So what does that say to you? It says that Bob Mueller knows how important it was. He sat with him for 70 hours. And when Michael Cohen is sentenced December 12th, he's going to be sentenced for these two things together. And you will hear a judge read a letter from Bob Mueller about how Michael has cooperated, the way he's cooperated. If you saw, the people who were in court today with him saw the way he was relating with the prosecutors and with the press. It was a very different Michael Cohen than several months ago. Michael Cohen is on this team. He's on the blue team. And he's on the right team.
Oh my God. Oh my God. So think about this. What a week, right? What a week. Do you remember how the week started? Does anybody remember? No. Well, it started with gassing some little kids in diapers at the border. That's kind of how it started. And then we found out that 15,000 people were going to lose their jobs when 5 GM plants were announced closing. So that's how it started. And then we got a little peek, a little look-see into Melania Trump's vision of Russian Christmas in the White House. And Twitter went crazy, and they did everything from dress those bloody red murder trees like handmaids to asking how many Elmos had to die for her to have this red Christmas, to actually putting Melania Trump walking through her Christmas decorations to the soundtrack of The Shining. That's how the week started. That was like day one of the week. I mean, it's just so unbelievable. Then Donald Trump started screaming his gut knows more than the Federal Reserve chair about monetary policy. His gut and his thumbs are, the best, and he knows more about, general. I mean, it's so. And then he said he would F over all the Americans to get back at GM. Donnie Jr. told voters to vote for an unrepentant racist. Trump went down to Mississippi and stumped for an unrepentant segregationist, school-going, sent her daughters to segregationist school racist. And then he won a Senate race, so it looked like a good week for him until, Until Michael Cohen surprised everybody and walked into a courtroom on Thursday. I mean, this is just amazing. Michael Cohen literally surprised everybody, walked into a Manhattan federal courtroom unannounced, did it by absolute surprise, and pled guilty to lying to Congress about Donald Trump's outreach to Russia, not only during his campaign, but during the transition and during his presidency. And then the whole thing started cascading. Yesterday afternoon, we also learned that the police in Germany raided Deutsche Bank, Trump's sugar daddy, or sugar mama, because the banker, her name's Rosemary, she's a woman over in Germany. And this is all a reaction to some crimes they found in the Panama Papers. Apparently, Deutsche Bank not only funneled, we've known this, they were fined by the United States and various other countries, for laundering $10 billion from Deutsche Bank's Moscow office to Deutsche Bank, Germany, getting all this oligarch money out of Moscow for Putin. And that we knew, but what we didn't know is that they were helping customers create these offshore accounts to avoid taxes. And then we find out that Trump's tax lawyer in Chicago, his office was raided. What's the connective tissue there? Well, seems like Deutsche Bank, the first big loan that they ever made to Donald Trump was $640 million for the Chicago Trump Tower. And this Ed Burke guy was the tax attorney for Trump Tower, Chicago. Small world, isn't it? So looks like that everybody that ever knew Trump is having their offices raided. I better tidy up. No, I'm serious. I once stood in front of him at Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young concert. I had a better seat than Donald Trump did. I was actually in attendance with Tim Robbins. Yes, that Tim Robbins. And Donald Trump was behind me. And me and Tim were very excited because Tim Robbins is 6'5". Donald Trump is a mere 6'2". And we were blocking his view and very happy to be doing it. So there you have it. But now all of a sudden, everybody is understanding what Michael Cohen has. You know what nobody's talking about? The fact that Michael Cohen said he had tape recordings, remember? And he produced one of them. And that had to do with the campaign finance violations that Michael Cohen was found guilty or pled guilty to with the Stormy Daniels and the McDougal girl, the Karen McDougal girl, right? So when Donald Trump says, Michael Cohen, he was convicted of stuff that had nothing to do with us, that's a lie, too. And Donald Trump keeps saying, like he's tweeting out this morning, so what? I did it. I do it again. I'm allowed to do whatever. I swear to God, it sounds like Goodfellas, right? Karen can do whatever she wants. He says, I could do whatever I want. I was a private citizen and I could do whatever I wanted. Now we're finding out that it was not just as his private citizenship. It was, after he got the nomination, he was a presidential candidate. It was, at the inauguration, Flynn is texting and Flynn is asking and Flynn is like, what's going to happen with the Russian money for my nuclear deal? And, it's so sick. So you've got everybody now understanding that Michael Cohen has all the goods. I mean, the big stuff. He's got tapes, probably. He's got, all kinds of communications from Donald Trump. He also has the goods on Junior. He also has the goods on Manafort. He also has the goods on Eric Prince. He also there's so many people that are about to go down, and it's going to look just like a crime family. Just like a crime family.
It was a remarkable week, and it's only Friday morning. Remember, Friday is when the grand jury in D.C. that the special counsel meets, that he uses meets. So if there are more indictments coming, we could even see those today. And I think we know that an indictment of Jerome Corsi is coming at some point now that he's rejected this plea agreement. I think an indictment of Roger Stone is coming at some point. So we may not be done with activity this week. One thing I want to say about the president's behavior. That clip that you played earlier when he said when he was on yesterday on the South Lawn of the White House talking about Michael Cohen being weak as opposed to some other people. Who does he mean by the other people? He means Paul Manafort, who has torn up his cooperation agreement because he won't tell the truth. And I suspect he means Roger Stone, who continues to not cooperate with the special counsel. the president is talking like a mob boss. He's talking like the head of a drug cartel, not like the president of the United States who swore an oath to the Constitution to uphold the Constitution and take care that the laws be faithfully executed. I think we get so used to the president acting the way he does that we can kind of get, this stuff kind of rolls off our backs. But I think it really was a remarkable moment to see the president talking about how people who cooperate with law enforcement are weak, and people, the people who don't cooperate or that lie to the Justice Department or that try to protect criminals are strong. A really, really, I think, awful moment for the president and an awful moment for the country.
Yeah, it is an awful moment for the country. It's a sad day for America to realize that you have a president who, and I said this yesterday, it was the thing that jumped out at me the most, was not just that, there was an information that, we could read to you. And in fact, I think we should, about what Michael Cohen has and what Michael Cohen can show and what Michael Cohen knows and what Michael Cohen is agreeing to. And, it wasn't just that. And it's not just that Michael Cohen is now going to bring down Roger Stone, which is so overdue. I mean, it's just so crazy. Just to retire the round glasses and the slippers and the weird outfits. And, I just feel bad for his pot dealer, because they're going to go broke because Roger's like one-stop shopping for, anybody selling drugs, apparently. But, the idea that Trump stood on the South Lawn of the White House yesterday preparing to go to the G20 summit where the entire world and their leaders were watching him and suggested that people that don't cooperate with U.S. law enforcement agencies are the good guys and the strong guys, and that people that do cooperate with law enforcement are rats. And he has called them rats. And I said that as a joke yesterday, that they're rats, their whole family are rats, right? And that came right out of the president's mouth. And that was the thing that really stunned me about all this, because quite frankly, we've always known since the day he said, Russia, if you're listening, that Russia was helping him. And then shortly thereafter, the intelligence community concluded the same. And then shortly thereafter, we had a debate and Hillary Clinton called him a puppet of Russia and tried to tell you, and the whole thing. And then he fires James Comey because Comey had to go and brief him about a PP tape. The dossier turns out to be absolutely true. The only thing that's not confirmed is the nature of the compromise, but we know the money trail is there. We know that Vlad has been cultivating him for years. Donnie Deutsch told you the man, and I've said this to you a million times, the man was bankrupt. He was going broke. He was the only casino operator I ever heard of where the house lost. And he needed money desperately. And he had pissed through all his father's money. And the one great story that the New York Times, the biggest bombshell of all, about how Trump was, bailed out over and over and over again throughout his life by his daddy and the tax fraud and the whole 9 yards. That story bombed. Nobody was interested in following the money, which is the key here. It is the absolute key that unlocks the door to what the Russians have on Donald Trump. They own him. He is purchased. The Saudis own him too. We know Eric Prince had a meeting with the Crown Prince of the UAE, and he's been going back and forth with the Saudis. The Seychelles meeting, that whole thing. And Eric Prince is somebody that is facing a lot. He lied to Congress. There's no question. I mean, so many people are going down over here. But it's a sad day that the President of the United States is a mob boss. But he's not the capo de capo. He's not even the best. He's an underling. He's an inferior officer in the mafioso, and that the lead guys are the Saudis and the Russians. And did you see them today at the G20 high-fiving? Holy crap, man. If that doesn't send chills down your spine, you don't have a spine. You're a ferret.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Here, watch this. This is sickening. Oh, snap. You know what that it's like Brett was saying, it's like two James Bond villains, you know, getting together. It's like Odd Job and Goldfinger. Yeah, we got away with it, man. We got away with it. We killed a journalist, an American. We got an American. Nailed it. Scotty says it's like two frat boys after they raped a trainload of girls. Hey, nailed it, got him. Oh, got away with it, Kavanaugh. Just saying. It is so chilling, and they did that. They did that. That was there was no audio there. So if you're just listening, it was Prince Mohammed bin Salman who killed Khashoggi and Vladimir Putin, who owns our president, high-fiving each other at the G20 summit in front of Donald Trump. It's so in his face, like, dude, you're owned. We got you. You can't do a damn thing about it, and and I'm telling you, Vlad knows that the clock is ticking on the Trump presidency. And that's why he's invading Ukraine, which, by the way, will be a submarine war. Yeah, I spent some time reading, what admirals at NATO are saying. And they go, oh, this is going to be an underwater war because Russia knows they can't compete with us on the land. And they certainly can't compete with us in the air. But they do have these nuclear submarines. And they got about 6 of them right now, pre-positioned, and they're ready to go. So don't join the Navy, anybody. Don't join the Navy. Because this is happening. This is on. This is so unbelievable. This man is so dangerous.
How much leverage the Russians had over Trump as a candidate, over Trump as the president. As a candidate, he clearly wanted the financial dealings for his real estate to go through in Russia. That meant that the Russians had something on him. Then he lies about it, which means that the Russians had something on him. And they wanted changes in policy, which Trump was sort of obliged or willing to do. So the amount of leverage that the Russians had over Trump, whether it was exposed or not, is something that we didn't know before, but now is sort of fully exposed by Michael Cohen. That's a very, very good place for the Russians to be because it's destabilized not just the presidency, but of course our American democracy at this stage. This is a no laugh day today. This is pretty shocking.
That's what I keep saying. It's not a laugh day. It's a very sad day for America. It is an unbelievably sad week for America because now we know there was indeed conspiracy. There was cooperation. There is an ownership that a fifth, 10th rate nation has over our president. And why are those two, the Saudis and the Russians, why are those two? Because they're petrol states. And they're thrilled with their pick. They're just thrilled with the ownership of the American president.
How much leverage the Russians had over Trump as a candidate?
Here, I was doing this.
How much leverage the Russians...
No, that's the same clip. Yeah, no, they're both the same. But the idea that everybody is hip to the fact that this president is owned, that this president is dangerous and doesn't give a rat's ass about America, doesn't care about democracy, doesn't care about anything except himself.
So to be clear, Mr. Trump has no financial relationships with any Russian oligarchs.
That's what he said. That's what I said. That's obviously what our position is.
Oh, my God.
Ringing denial.
And that was in July. That was at the time of the Republican convention, which followed by about a month when this deal fell apart, which it fell apart officially on the very day that the Washington Post reported the Russian hack into the Democratic emails, June 14th, 2016, the day that miraculously the Trump Tower Moscow deal fell through and the day it was reported.
Well, I think we know that Paul Manafort is not a morning person.
That's right.
If there's one thing we can say definitively.
I mean,
would have been much more.
If you believe that all of these things are coincidental, you really have a very active imagination. These things are all connected. One of the things that really troubles me, though, is the way they respond. I was watching yesterday, and Donald Trump sounds like a crime boss. People who are rats. He's weak. And, Jim Acosta reported last night that a senior White House aide said to him that that Cohen is a rat and inmates hate rats.
Oh, boy.
Oh, geez.
That's a senior government employee talking like, mafia muscle. And that really, that sort of mentality should be really troubling to people.
It should be troubling to people that the president talks like that the president is a mob boss and that he's an inferior mob boss. He's not a capo de capo. He's not even important. I mean, there are so many people above him that it's kind of crazy. You got the Russians, you got the Saudis, you got the UAE, you got so many people. Deutsche Bank, they got the goods on him, obviously. They got Weisselberg. Manafort. Mueller has Weisselberg, the CFO, and gave him limited immunity. And I'm telling you, all this stuff is going to come out, and it's going to be so obvious except for the white supremacists who are going to, try and fight back and protect their Nazi, protect their dude, protect their guy. Everybody else is just going to, they're just going to, now I got to turn my back on you. And that includes the Republicans. You can already see it happening in the Senate. There's some good news today. There's a couple of things I wanted to draw. And you know what's so amazing? 800,000 to 1.1 million people have no idea how close they came to absolute starvation in this country today. They don't even realize it. But here's what happened. The Senate is turning their back on Trump incrementally, okay? They're saying that tax cut, that's what you get for a lifetime of work, right? They handed him a sweaty wad of cash, and they told him that's what you get nothing else from us. And how do we know that? Well, Donald Trump had nominated a judge, a lawyer, a white supremacist lawyer that used to work for Jesse Helms. Remember Jesse Helms, the Hands commercial? We played you that. You needed that job. You wanted that job. And it's got a pair of white hands crumpling up, but they said because of affirmative action, you didn't get that job, implying that black people were taking things from white people. That was Jesse Helms. And this lawyer actually worked for Jesse Helms, defending Jesse Helms when the Justice Department was investigating Jesse Helms back in 1990, because Jesse Helms was one of the biggest voter suppression guys that had ever come down the pike. And he was sending out these postcards to black people telling them that they were not eligible to vote. And this lawyer for Jesse Helms, also there was a big gerrymandering thing, that the Supreme Court actually ruled that the map that was that was drawn by the Republican-controlled legislature in North Carolina, that it was a partisan gerrymander, that it had the intent of being a racial gerrymander to keep black people's votes diluted, and also there was a court that ruled that the voter ID law that this particular candidate for the judgeship wrote was, and this is you'll remember this decision because of the words the judge used to strike down this voter ID law. He said that the voter identification law was written with almost surgical precision to target black voters. Remember that? Well, this is the lawyer that wrote that law. His name is Thomas Farr. And Mike Pence, they were doing the procedural vote first. And Mike Pence, it was 50-50 in the Senate. And Mike Pence was called in to break the tie. And next week, there will be the real vote to confirm him. And the votes are not there for him. Why? Well, Tim Scott of South Carolina, who is the only black Republican that I know of anymore, right, because Mia Love was a black Republican who just lost her House seat. Tim Scott obviously is the only Republican black senator. Tim Scott said, I just can't give you my vote. I just can't. And so he's not going to vote for Thomas Farr, and neither is Susan Collins of Maine or Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. And Jeff Flake is a no, because Jeff Flake is not voting for any of Trump's judicial nominees as long as they don't vote for the bill to protect Robert Mueller's investigation. But Tim Scott actually said he was a no because when he had asked Thomas Farr about whether or not he had sent out these postcards that were part of a complaint in federal court that were sent out to black voters and threatening them and intimidating them, saying that, they may be arrested as felons and all this stuff. Thomas Farr told Tim Scott that he played no role in drafting those postcards. And then there was a DOJ memo that finally became public. And in the memo, it said that the Helms campaign's efforts to discourage black people from voting shed new light on Mr. Farr's activities, because the memo said that Thomas Farr had worked on a previous ballot security program for Jesse Helms, including a postcard mailing to voters in predominantly black precincts, which was designed to serve as a basis to challenge voters on Election Day. So Tim Scott said no, and this guy is going to go down in flames. He's not going to get his seat, which is great because he's a real voter suppression guy, right along the lines of, Chris Kobach, who, Donald Trump is, oh, by the way, at the G20, Shinzo Abe of Japan, he was trying to butter up Donald Trump, so he congratulated him on his huge win in the midterms. It was the biggest rout since, Nixon in 1972. He got 40 seats in the House. That was a blue tsunami. That really was. The problem with the Senate was we were defending too many seats, and Claire McCaskill did not prevail. I mean, a lot of incumbents, Heidi Heitkamp, those races, we had to hold them. We had to work so hard to hold, and we couldn't hold. So it'll be 53-47 when they convene. But it certainly wasn't a big win. The House, here's the beauty part. So I'm telling you that they raided Deutsche Bank, and I'm telling you that they raided this guy, Ed Burke, in Chicago's office. Ed Burke did tax work for Donald Trump's Trump Tower Chicago for 12 years. And Deutsche Bank has been raided because of, opening up offshore accounts to help people launder their money or protect their money from taxation in the United States, right? And guess who, come January, is going to be the chairman of the Financial Services Committee? The committee that holds banks like Deutsche Bank and Wells Fargo and the Consumer Protection Bureau accountable to the people. Guess who is going to be the chairman of the very powerful Financial Services Committee? Why, it's Auntie Maxine Waters. This is not going to go well for Donald Trump. I mean, the walls are closing in on this dude. And while, I'm like, what will I wear on December 12th, the day that they read the sentencing document for Michael Cohen? And when will I get the Manafort sentencing document? And what will I wear that day? And whether or not we should have a sandwich platter, popcorn, peanuts, pizza. It's really not a day to celebrate. Those documents, those sentencing documents, are going to lay out a story that is going to make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. I mean, it is going to be chilling to know that the president of the United States is still the president of the United States, even after we get the whole layout, after we get the whole caper, after we get the whole Lufthansa heist, after we get every piece of, it's just unbelievable. And, people are already showing up dead, whether through natural causes or otherwise. One by one, we're losing our friends, as Hyman Roth said, in Cuba. Yeah, the head of the GRU, the head of the Russian intelligence services, died this week. Or ended up dead. We don't know, because they don't, they hate journalists, and the Saudis and the Putin, the crown prince and the oligarch supreme and the capo de capos, Putin, are high-fiving themselves at the G20 because they're getting away with literally murder. Khashoggi. I mean, listen, the Saudis literally got an American resident journalist. They literally did. And Putin loves to kill journalists. His GRU guy is dead. You can't even ask him a question because he's dead, deader than dead. Do you know, I mean, it's just so amazing. And they're high-fiving. We're getting away with, literally getting rid of their enemies one by one.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
I mean, I have nothing to do with Russia. I don't have any jobs in Russia. I'm all over the world, but we're not involved in Russia. I have no relationship to Russia. I don't deal there. I have no businesses there. I have no loans from Russia.
I have nothing to do with Russia, folks, okay?
I don't have any deals in Russia. I have nothing to do with Russia. I have no investments in Russia, none whatsoever. I have no dealings with Russia. I have no deals in Russia. I have no deals that could happen in Russia because we've stayed away.
What do I know about the Russians? What do I know about the Russians? Then they said, he borrows money from... I don't borrow money from the Russians. I promise you, I don't have any deals with Russia. I had Miss Universe there a couple of years ago. Other than that, no. I have nothing to do.
I have nothing to do. And, oh my God. So now he's out there saying that everybody knew that he was doing business with Russia. Everybody knew. He said it was covered in the papers and everybody knew. And it was, he said, and today Twitler puts... I decided to run for president and continue to run my business. Very legal and very cool. If there are two words that don't belong together with the word Trump, it's legal and cool. He said, I lightly looked at doing a building somewhere in Russia. Lightly looked? Oh, so I guess it was one of those informal billion-dollar towers that Felix Sater worked on for years and years and years. You know, when you lightly look, maybe you sign up for an email. When you lightly look, you don't reach out to corrupt oligarchs. You don't offer them a $50 million penthouse in the building. You know, I really wish he would have built the Trump Tower Moscow just so that I could go back to Russia. The only reason why I would ever visit Russia ever again after being there and realizing what a decrepit, corrupt, gray, dismal, horrible place filled with horrible people it is. The only reason I would go back there is if there was a Trump Tower Moscow just so I could pee on the bed. Lightly looked. What did he I went and browsed locations. I took a couple of pamphlets. I signed up for a few email alerts. No, I mean, this is just crazy. This man is just such a lunatic, liar. And, of course, Michael Cohen has the goods.
I spoke with a source who is very close to Michael Cohen, who said to me today, in no uncertain terms, Michael has the goods. He has extremely valuable information. And so this clearly goes beyond the Trump Tower Moscow that we're talking about, although that is crucial and important. But if Michael Cohen is talking, and we know how close he was to Trump at certain points, how loyal he has been to Donald Trump, and we also know the things that were being asked in the grand jury. So you have to assume that they are, that they're not only talking about Trump Tower Moscow, they're talking about who knew what, when, about the WikiLeaks dump, about the meeting in Don Jr.'s office with the Russians. Did the president know about it? So I think Michael Cohen now, who was the man who said he would take a bullet for the president, has now become Brutus to the president because he has this need now to his people say, tell the truth and come clean, and is no longer in the business of protecting Donald Trump, which is what he did for all those years that he worked for Trump.
That's right. That's what his business was. He was the fixer for Donald Trump. He knows everything. And he's got tape recordings, which nobody seems to want to, remind you. And they're not just going to be of Donald Trump calling people the N-word, which, I'm sure exists too somewhere in the universe. But this man was a perfect dupe. He has been cultivated for years by Putin. And Putin and Saudi were high-fiving over their success getting over on America. Murdered a U.S. resident, took sailors hostage, poisoned British citizens, and killed the head, or at least the head of the GRU is dead through natural causes or otherwise. We're losing all our friends one by one. Literally dismembered a man, right?
Well, they could see right away that he was biddable. In 1985, he started taking Russian money. It was dirty Russian money, mobster money from Brighton Beach. These people were connected to the KGB. He hosted a lot of these people. They were buying and selling apartments. And he also, parroted the Soviet line in those days, and he was perfect. He had the perfect dupe for the Russians. And so they hang this hotel over him in Moscow. The Russians had no intention of letting him build a hotel in '87. I know that for a fact. But they invite him there in tourists, supposedly, but it's actually the KGB. And they look at this guy as a replacement for Armand Hammer, who was very pro-Soviet and was ailing at the time. And so they know Trump very well. They had report after report after report. And they knew that even his running in the election in 2016 was a victory for them because he just overlooked the invasion of Crimea. They loved the guy, and they could count on him because he needed money to do their bidding. He was biddable, and they knew it.
They knew it, and they have been cultivating this man for the longest time. Guys like Roger Stone have been asking Donald Trump to run for president since, 2000? And I mean, Roger Stone obviously is a world heavyweight champion liar. His story keeps changing. Obviously, he said he was in touch with Julian Assange.
I actually have communicated with Assange. I believe the next tranche of his documents pertain to the Clinton Foundation, but there's no telling what the October surprise may be.
Mm-hmm. And then, I don't know if you remember Sam Nunberg, but Sam Nunberg said that Roger Stone told him that he had met with Julian.
Well, look, I had warned Roger, who I'm very close with, during that last summer. I had warned him repeatedly during that 2016 summer, do not associate yourself with Julian Assange. And I said for two reasons. Yeah. One, at that point, it seemed pretty obvious that Hillary Clinton was going to win, and there was surely going to be a special counsel into these matters. And if there was a a Democrat majority in either body of Congress, then he was going to be called. Little do I know that even Donald Trump can get elected, and we still have a special counsel. I mean, that's really an accomplishment by the president.
But what did Roger Stone, how did he respond to you when you said, don't deal with WikiLeaks?
Roger's going to do what Roger's going to do. Roger's advised me to do not to do certain things. We're very stubborn people. And I think Roger's argument is different than mine. I do not believe Julian Assange is a journalist. I do not believe when Julian Assange releases information that shows methods, that shows who's helping the United States, that is not the same as releasing the Pentagon Papers, which was a study showing that the government knew we were going to lose the Vietnam War.
But you do believe that Roger Stone met with WikiLeaks?
No, I don't believe it. I believe he told me he did. I just don't believe that he ended up meeting with them.
So what did he tell you about that?
I was trying to reach Roger and a couple we could talk 15 times a week or we cannot talk for 2 weeks. And I was trying to reach him and I was like, where the hell have you been? And Roger just said, oh, I was with Julian Assange. I met with Julian Assange.
I mean, these people are literally delusional, or they're, in communications. And obviously, Roger Stone has a whole bunch of text messages and direct messages with Guccifer 2.0, who turns out to be a Russian intelligence operative who is the part of the hacking team that, hacked into the Democratic National Committee. I mean, obviously, Roger Stone knew what was coming. Jerome Corsi knew what was coming. They tweeted out on August 21st. Roger Stone tweets out, it's Podesta's time in the barrel next, right? And these people are all lying to Congress because Devin Nunes was in charge. Devin Nunes was in charge of the Intel Committee, and they were able to go in there and they were able to say, oh, no, we never, there are no direct messages between me and Guccifer. And okay, thank you very much for coming in. Jerome Corsi, same thing. Eric Prince, he lied. He lied to Congress about back channels and the Seychelles meeting, and that was the Saudis. That was the UAE, and this guy George Nader, also a pedophile. Why are they all pedophiles? That's the sick connection. It's just so twisted. The Miami Herald just did the most amazing, full-on, multiple part report on Jeffrey Epstein and his pedophilia, and how Jeffrey Epstein was hanging out with Donald Trump and his lawyers. Listen, the thing about Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, even Charlie Black, they all had a law firm together, and it was a lobby shop is what it was, with Lee Atwater, the dirtiest of the dirty. And they had, they were responsible for electing every Republican president that we've had in modern history, from Ronald Reagan to H.W. to W. To this dude, okay? And it's so interesting that every time you look up a story about pedophilia, or every time somebody covers a story about pedophile rings, the names of the same people as the lawyers for the pedophiles come screaming back into the headlines. I mean, it's just so sick and it's so twisted. And then you have like the InfoWars people, which is Jerome Corsi, which is Roger Stone. I mean, Jerome Corsi is like the managing editor for Alex Jones' InfoWars. These are the people that did the Loose Change movie. These are the people that said 9/11 was an inside job. These are the people that said that the kids that were killed at Sandy Hook were child actors. These are the people that blamed the leaks, okay, the WikiLeaks. They said it wasn't WikiLeaks at all that was leaking the DNC documents. Oh, no, it was this guy, Seth Rich. It was him, because he was shot in a robbery in downtown Washington, D.C. at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And they said, oh, look, a dead body. Let's blame him for the DNC leaks. This way, they won't look at us. This way, they won't look at Julian Assange. This way, they won't look at Corsi. They won't look at Stone. And that's where the Seth Rich story came from. And Fox News was happy to run with it. And Fox News put it out there until the family of Seth Rich said, cut the crap already. This is like Kate Steinle's family also. Stop it. Stop it. Our daughter, Kate Steinle, loved all people. She had no beef with any immigrants. None. She didn't have a prejudiced bone in her body. Cut the crap. But this is like the little, echo chamber, right? Roger Stone dreams up something. Jerome Corsi, writes it, and then Breitbart, and then Fox News, and so Seth Rich becomes a conspiracy theory. And then, in order not to look at the real pedophiles here, Hillary Clinton is the pedophile. She's the one that's running a ring out of Comet Pizza and ping pong ball, and they're the pedophiles. It's kind of creepy. I got to tell you, it's just, really, really creepy. And now one of the lawyers for Epstein, like the prosecutor here in Florida, who was supposed to prosecute Epstein for having abused, had sex with like 100 underage teenage girls who came either from foster homes or from drug addicted homes or from trailer parks here in Florida, in West Palm Beach and Miami. Some of the girls were working at Mar-a-Lago. Yeah. Now all of a sudden we find out that the lawyer who cut the deal so Epstein would get no prison time is now Trump's Secretary of Labor. Our Secretary of Labor.
Acosta, now President Trump's labor secretary, didn't explain why he sealed the details of Epstein's plea so that no one would know the scope of Epstein's crimes or who was involved. Years later, he said he and his staff were bombarded by Epstein's army of legal superstars who launched a year-long assault against him and other prosecutors that they took all the way to the U.S. Attorney General in Washington, D.C.
If you don't let the victims be a part of the solution, there is no solution. And in the case of Jeffrey Epstein, the prosecutors created a universe that excluded the victims and disempowered them for a second time and empowered the perpetrator. That is absolutely unacceptable.
Really, if you think about it too hard, it's scary because this is our government that's supposed to protect us, but has done everything to protect, a pedophile.
Federal prosecutors claim they achieved a victory by forcing Epstein to register as a sex offender, but there's no agency that regularly monitors his whereabouts. He lists his residence as the U.S. Virgin Islands, but his flight records show that he takes trips around the United States and Europe in his new private plane.
This is probably the most unjust outcome of any case that I've been involved in
in 40 years.
I think it's something that the government just can't ignore anymore. There's so many of us that they just can't forget about it. It's not something that's going to be yesterday's news.
Since then, about 24 civil lawsuits have been filed in connection with the case, including one set to go to trial in December in state court in Palm Beach County that could finally expose more about Epstein's crimes, how many people were involved, and why his case was dismissed by federal prosecutors.
This is just stunning. It is the most amazing story I have ever heard in my life. And the lawyers for Jeffrey Epstein, Ken Starr, Alan Dershowitz, Charlie Black, Manafort, Stone and Kelly, and now our labor secretary was the prosecutor who allowed Jeffrey Epstein to sign a sealed plea deal and didn't even tell the victims, the girls, about it.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe it. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
This is going to freak you out, okay? This is it's not really a complete change of subject, but this has to do with the Jeffrey Epstein pedophilia case, which is now a civil case because the criminal case failed, right? Because our labor secretary, who was a prosecutor back then, actually cut a deal with Jeffrey Epstein and his lawyers, who was every lawyer that you've ever heard of represented Jeffrey Epstein because he was a multimillionaire with a lot of money, and he was able to purchase Ken Starr and Alan Dershowitz, a whole cast of lawyers. And the now labor secretary was a 38-year-old prosecutor, a Republican, cut a deal and put it under seal so that even the victims of Jeffrey Epstein's pedophilia didn't know what had happened. Now, the reason why this is all becoming fresh again and why the Florida newspapers, this was the most amazing story in the Miami Herald. It was published 2 days ago. I tweeted about it, but we didn't get to talk about it because Michael Cohen just surprised us all by walking into a courtroom yesterday and pleading guilty to, helping Trump reach Russia for a lot longer than we thought, and by confessing that he lied to Congress. Okay, that's what happened yesterday. And the implications are great for Jerome Corsi, for Roger Stone, for Donald Trump Jr., for Eric Prince, for Steve Bannon, for Hope Hicks, for just everybody that was part of the Trump administration and the Trump campaign, because Michael Cohen's got the goods. Okay, so that story upended this one. But this one is important, and the reason why it's being written about yet again is because come December 4th, which is what, Monday? I mean, today, oh, by the way, what's today? The last day of the month, everybody. So tomorrow is the first day of the month, which means give. Buy a hat. Buy my fierce Randi Rhodes t-shirts. Buy them for Christmas. We don't have that many hats. I just ordered 50 more. I went through like 2,000 hats. So these things ought to be replacing we sold a crap load of them. They ought to be replacing the Make America Hate Again hat as the hat for people who signal to each other that we're the good guys. The black hat means good guys. The black T-shirt, good guys. But also, if you're somebody who can afford to do this, you could donate to us at randirhodes.com. You can donate, and I will gift podcasts if that's your wish. or I'll just take your money off your hands so that we could pay the bills around here. And I only do this to you once a month. I only, pressure you once a month because that's the day that I write all the checks. And today was the day I wrote all the checks. Well, not all of them. I got a couple more that come due on the 26th, which I just paid. And then, so please do reach deep down. And if you can, if you can't, you can. And that's fine. And I respect that. And let me tell you something. I get checks from people, literally checks, from people who send me $10. And you are the most important givers, because if you're giving me $10, I know you barely have $10. And don't think I don't appreciate that, because I totally get that. I mean, now I don't live large either, so I get the $10 thing. But if you're in a position, please do give, so that we can gift podcasts to those who can't afford them, et cetera, et cetera. And the merch is great because you can gift it for Christmas, and it is the season for Randi Rhodes is the reason for the season. Well, I'm Jewish, so of course it is. But anyway, so on December 4th, there is a civil case being brought by the victims of Jeffrey Epstein in Palm Beach, here in Palm Beach. This is where I am. I'm sitting in Palm Beach County. And the girls are going to have their day in court. Now, I'm going to play this video for you that was created by the Miami Herald, who wrote these articles. Julie K. Brown is the lead reporter on these stories. I don't know her, but Julie, oh my God, this is incredible reporting. The name of the series of articles is called Perversion of Justice, and it outlines how before the Me Too movement, there was a multimillionaire in Palm Beach named Jeffrey Epstein, who was a repeat sex offender, who was running sort of a pyramid scheme. And he was preying on girls who live in our area, who were working at my mall, as cashiers or merchandise, arranging, the clothes in the Nordstroms. They were working at Mar-a-Lago in the kitchen. I mean, these were girls that grew up in Florida trailer parks around here, whose parents were drug addicted, who had no supervision at home, who were just desperate for money. And Jeffrey Epstein would find these girls, and he would pay these girls for massages, and then sexually, assault them, and then give them more money if they would go out and find more of their friends to go to Jeffrey Epstein's house and do the same. And here is some of this video is it's a video of the girls today.
We were underage. We were little girls. I was 16.
I was 16.
I started going to him when I was like 14 turning 15.
If you think at 14, $200, that's a lot of money at 14 years old. I mean, that's a lot of money now.
She's like, oh, do you need to make any extra money? I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, I can give you, like $200. There's this older guy in Palm Beach. He gets a lot of massages from girls. That was really...
They were recruited by someone who was adept at finding girls that would be willing to, go to a house for a few $100s. And as it started out, give a man a back rub, but many cases it turned into something far worse than that, elevated to a crime, and a serious crime. In some cases, sexual batteries.
My life would have been different if I would have never went to Jeffrey Epstein's house. It was just a dark turning point in my life.
On June 30th, 2008, Jeffrey Epstein, a Palm Beach multimillionaire hedge fund manager, received what might have been the most lenient plea deal for a serial sex offender in U.S. history. The Miami Herald identified over 60 of his victims, just young middle and high school girls at the time of the abuse. More than a decade later, several of them are talking for the first time about how they were molested by Epstein and believe they were betrayed by the very prosecutors who were supposed to hold Epstein accountable.
They came from fairly disadvantaged backgrounds. There was some dysfunction in their families. The lure of a lot of money was more than they were able to resist.
I went from an abusive situation to being a runaway to living in foster homes to just already being hardened by life on the streets.
The other girls that I personally know of that were coming from trailer parks, that were having gun shootings, drugs.
My mother was on drugs at the time, and she couldn't provide for me, and I was pretty much homeless.
One child would be lured over, would be paid substantial sums of money, would be offered the further inducement of being paid a bounty for anybody else that she was able to bring to Epstein. A network developed where many young girls in the same kinds of circumstance wound up being victimized.
The three of us slid into the backseat of the cab and we drove, and I remember just driving down Okeechobee Boulevard and thinking how I had never been on Palm Beach Island before in my whole entire life, that I had lived in West Palm Beach.
Yeah. By the time I was 16, I brought him up to 75 girls, all the ages of 14, 15, 16, people going from 8th grade to 9th grade at just school parties is where I'd recruit him from.
All Jeffrey cared about was go find me more girls. His appetite was insatiable. He couldn't stop. He wanted new, fresh, young faces every single day.
The sheer volume of girls, the frequency, sometimes several or many in the same day, the age of the girls. In some cases, there were victims that didn't know each other, had never met each other, but they had basically the same story.
I remember there was a staircase, and it was like kind of like a spiral almost.
And she brings us up the stairs, and it was like spiral stairs.
You walked into his bedroom, around his bed, to almost like a very little hall, and then it was another door. And that's where everything would happen, was in his bathroom. He would have a dresser, and it was filled with like, the first drawer was lotion, and then like the third drawer down was like sex toys. So we would take the massage table out and set it up in the middle of the room.
And then he came in with his white towel on around him.
And then he just laid down in his towel on his stomach, and he was just talking to people on the phone. When he flipped over, that's when he said, okay, you can go ahead and take off your shirt and pants, but you can stay in your underwear.
He would want us to stand next to him, and he would masturbate while he stared at us, touched us.
To pull his nipples and to play with them in between his fingers, and also while I was playing with his nipples, he kept doing that stuff to me. But he was very aggressive, like when he would do it.
And then he tried to put his finger in my underwear, and I like jumped back, and I pulled back, and I was like, whoa. And he's like, no, it's okay, I'm sorry, I won't do that. And then he went back to doing that. He's like, just on the outside, and I'm like, oh my God.
It ended with sexual abuse and intercourse, and then a pat on the back. You've done a really good job. Like, thank you very much, and here's $200.
So what happened was, in 2007, you had the top federal prosecutor in Miami, a guy named Alex Acosta, who is now our labor secretary under Donald Trump. He had a breakfast appointment with an attorney named Jay Lefkowitz. And, Alex Acosta was 38 years old. He was a Republican star. He had served in White House posts before. He was named U.S. Attorney in Miami by President George W. Bush. And instead of meeting at the prosecutor's offices, they both decided that they would meet at the Marriott Hotel in West Palm Beach, 70 miles away from Miami. Lefkowitz was the U.S. Special Envoy to North Korea. He was a corporate lawyer, and this meeting for him was critical because his client was Jeffrey Epstein, a Palm Beach millionaire who was accused of assembling a very large cult-like network of underage girls with the help of young underage female recruiters. And those girls were paid to go out and find other girls from their middle school class or from school parties and bring them to Jeffrey Epstein and talk them into having sex acts in his Palm Beach mansion as often as 3 times a day. This is according to the Palm Beach police. Now, I think people know that Jeffrey Epstein was friends with the most powerful people in this country. He was friends with Bill Clinton. He was friends with Donald Trump. He was friends with Prince Andrew. And he was suspected of trafficking minor girls from overseas for sex parties at his home in West Palm, not West Palm, that's where I live, in Palm Beach, Manhattan, New Mexico, his island in the Virgin Islands. And this is according to FBI court records. There was a 53-page federal indictment that should have put Epstein in prison for the rest of his life. But that breakfast meeting that morning, they struck a deal. Alex Acosta, who's now our labor secretary, decided that he would enter into a plea agreement for Epstein as the prosecutor. He took this plea agreement that was under seal and concealed the full extent of everything that Epstein had ever done and the number of people that were involved. So Epstein ended up serving, this is an interesting part of the story, 13 months in county jail, but he wasn't in county jail. He was allowed to leave county jail every single day for 12 hours a day and go to his office in Palm Beach and have more sexual encounters with female friends. Thousands of emails, thousands of court documents, and thousands of FBI records are now going to be put on display in this civil case that's going to start here in Palm Beach on December 4th. All Epstein pled to was 2 prostitution charges. So not only did he abuse these young girls, but then they had the nerve to identify these young girls and call them prostitutes. If you are under 18 in Florida, you can't be a prostitute. You are a child sex slave, okay? The age of consent here is 18. You cannot be charged as a prostitute in Florida if you're under 18. And not only did this prosecutor, who's now our Secretary of Labor, Alex Acosta, give him a plea deal that was sealed so that these victims would never even know what happened, but he actually named 2 of them and called them prostitutes, made them the criminals in this. But even more unusual, the plea deal gave a grant of immunity to any potential co-conspirators who may have also been with Epstein and been involved in underage sex with these girls at Epstein's, either in Manhattan, New Mexico, Virgin Islands, or Palm Beach. Anybody that participated, anybody that was with him, anybody that also touched and abused a young girl was now absolved of any criminal liability under this plea deal. They were never identified in the agreement, and so we don't know who those people are.
Is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
You're talking about hundreds of children all over the world.
Victims that were alleged sex slaves of Jeffrey Epstein, that they brought over from Eastern Bloc countries.
I've seen hundreds and hundreds of girls go through Jeffrey's swinging door, his ever revolving door.
This guy is big time. He knows people that know people that know people.
Flight logs from his plane and his address book read like a who's who of some of the richest and most famous and powerful people in the world. Celebrities, actors, philanthropists, academics, and world leaders.
It's really disappointing to look, as a lawyer, to look at this circumstance and say, how did this happen? One individual commits one abuse of a minor in one instance of abuse of a minor, and they're held accountable for years and years through the criminal justice system. This individual abused hundreds of girls, and nothing happened. It's really, really unfortunate. We look at that and we say, how did the criminal justice system fail these girls in such a significant way? How has that happened?
There was ample physical evidence and witness testimony to support the girls' stories, including notepads seized from Epstein's home with their names and phone numbers, along with phone records. Despite the corroborating evidence, Palm Beach State Attorney Barry Krischer wanted to charge Epstein only with a misdemeanor.
Oh my God.
And once that happened, it was clear to me that justice would not be served by the state attorney in the handling of the case, and we referred it to the FBI. And then there were many, many more victims after that time.
Epstein hired somebody that would impress the state attorney, Barry Krischer, to drop the investigation.
The U.S. Attorney's Office got involved with this case with Jeffrey Epstein's A-list of defense attorneys that are extremely well known and extremely powerful. I think these attorneys were able to manipulate the sitting U.S. attorney and the assistant U.S. attorney working the cases. A few things happened in this case that during my law enforcement career I've never seen before. The U.S. attorneys here had an indictment and they were sending it back and forth to Jeffrey's lawyers for changes.
Oh my God.
Never seen anything like that before.
Well, I started getting somewhat of an inclination that this is a situation where somehow, for some reason, the defendant and the government are working together against the victims, although that kind of conspiracy theory sounds so preposterous that I didn't want to believe it.
A subsequent FBI investigation found a sprawling network of victims and enough evidence to fill a 53-page indictment with federal sex crime charges. But Miami U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta signed off on a secret plea bargain, while deliberately not informing Epstein's victims. The deal granted Epstein and his accomplices immunity from federal prosecution. Epstein pleaded guilty in state court to 2 prostitution charges and served 13 months. Epstein's punishment was like that of no other sex offender in Florida. He had a private space in a vacant wing of the Palm Beach County stockade, but records show he spent limited time there. He was allowed to go to his private West Palm Beach office, where he spent up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, often accepting visitors, including female friends.
This is the sickest story ever. And the thing that's so bizarre about it is how the InfoWars people, the Jerome Corsis and the Roger Stones and the Alex Joneses of the world sat on that radio show, sat on that internet show, sat and told people. I mean, Alex Jones, I remember he would cry. He would sit on his show and cry about pedophilia and the pedophiles. And Hillary, oh my God, and she smells like sulfur, and Hillary is running a pedophile ring out of the basement of a Washington pizza pub. And the truth of the matter is that the people around him, the people involved in that broadcast, they were actually doing that to distract from the obvious truth that a man who currently is our labor secretary was the prosecutor who allowed for this amazing pedophile ring to be sealed in a plea deal where this man, Jeffrey Epstein, was able to not stay in jail during the day, but go to his office during the day, all day, for 12 hours a day, and continue his behavior in his office while people thought he was serving 13 months for a misdemeanor. Now, Alex Acosta was being considered for Attorney General because, you know, Mr. Whitaker is only a temp. And Whitaker's entire job is to seal Mueller's report on Donald Trump's collusion, conspiracy with Russians and Saudis and all this. Whitaker was brought in there to crush that report, to keep that report sealed, to not let that report go to Congress, to not let that report go to the public. Except that Mueller is too smart. Mueller is going to do all the explaining in 2 sentencing documents. And those documents will be Manafort's sentencing document, and on December 12th, it will be in Michael Cohen's sentencing document. So as hard as you just got to sit there and say to yourself, oh my God, they're really good at this. They've done this before. These people that defend each other, the powerful, the rich, the well-connected. They have media outlets that will distract, media outlets that disinform, media outlets that say, look over there, Hillary is the one, she needs to be locked up, when it's truly Trump that needs to be locked up. Or she's running a pedophile ring out of a pizza parlor, when it's truly one of the Trump neighbors that is running a pedophile ring right up the road from Donald Trump's house. Dershowitz is on the television all the time defending Donald Trump, and he was one of the lawyers Epstein hired. In fact, one of those girls who's in that video, one of the girls who's telling her story there, claims that she was violated by Alan Dershowitz many times. Of course, Alan Dershowitz has consistently denied it, but now that we know that the plea agreement absolved any co-conspirators who God only knows who they might be, we don't know. We don't know who those co-conspirators are, but whoever they might be, they were absolved of any criminal activity in Jeffrey Epstein's plea deal. And we do know that Acosta, who is our labor secretary, was being considered, until this story broke, to be our next Attorney General of the United States. You want to know, if there's a swamp? There's a swamp. You want to know who built the swamp? These people. That's who built the swamp. The Manaforts, the Stones, the Dershowitzes, the Blacks. They built this swamp. They built this swamp. They installed their swampy people. They absolved themselves of crimes. But now there's going to be a civil case, and I don't know what kind of evidence is going to come out of that. But, you look at all the connective tissues of all these stories, and you know what you see in all these stories? The same names over and over and over and over. The same freaking names. It's pretty freaking amazing. It's just amazing. Several of the girls have said that they felt intimidated and frightened by Epstein and his, millionaire assistant and the lawyers that were around it. Dershowitz was interviewed for this article in the Miami Herald. He said he had nothing to do with gathering background on the girls or in directing anyone to follow the police or anyone to follow the girls or anyone to follow the girls' families, which happened. He nevertheless convinced the state attorney of Florida, Palm Beach, Barry Krischer, that these girls would not be credible witnesses on the stand and that you couldn't call them. But I will say the Palm Beach police and the FBI, they were livid. One of the guys has since died, and he said the biggest disappointment in his entire career, that one of the police officers, was this case, that he couldn't protect these girls. Now, you think about all this crap that Alex Jones and Roger Stone and Corsi put out there to deflect from the stuff that they were doing. For instance, the Seth Rich debacle, saying Seth Rich, who worked for the DNC, he was the leaker, when truly it was Julian Assange, Roger Stone, Jerome Corsi, Manafort that were getting inside information from WikiLeaks about what they had when they would dump it. And of course, after the Access Hollywood tape, well, you could do whatever you want. You can grab them by the P word, you could do whatever you want. They let you do it. There was a frenzy of phone calls between Corsi and Stone and get to Assange and get him to drop and get him to release documents. And 30 minutes later, after the Access Hollywood tape was dropped, another WikiLeaks dump.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
There are so many connections between these people, all these people. The same. It's like the usual suspects. It's like Casablanca. We'll round up the usual. So every time you read a story that makes you gag, every time you read a story that scares you, every time you read another story about Donald Trump and how compromised he is, and how owned he is, and how indebted he is, and what a puppet he is, and who the puppet masters are, and you listen to tapes of him saying you could inspect the girls at the Teen USA pageant, and you find out that the same people that are defending him are the same people that were around during this scandal, this hideous, disgusting Jeffrey Epstein sex. This was a pedophile ring that was run on Palm Beach, on the Tony Little Island of Palm Beach, that prosecutors and state's attorneys and high-priced defense counsels like Ken Starr, who always seem to pop. Didn't Ken Starr lose his job at Pepperdine for screwing up some rape story? The students were raped, and he defended the rapists and lost his job. Roy Black, who was also an Epstein defense attorney, he defended William Kennedy Smith in Palm Beach in a rape trial. The woman's name was Patty Bowman, and Patty Bowman was alleging that she was raped by William Kennedy Smith, and Roy Black shows up in that sex crime case also and gets William Kennedy Smith acquitted. It's the same cast of characters that are always looking for the dirtiest guys, and they will defend them. And, reading through this and seeing, what the defense team for Epstein did and who they were, it's the same crowd. The Ken Starrs, the Lefkowitzes, the Alan Dershowitzes, the Roy Blacks. Same crew, same. And Dershowitz was responsible for, telling the prosecutors, oh, you can't put these girls on the stand. They're not credible. Hey, look, here's a MySpace page where the girls are drinking beer. Oh, look, underage drinking. No one's going to believe them. He met with the police chief. He met with the state attorney, and he shared with them, Dershowitz did, the results of an investigation into one of the girls that Alan Dershowitz described, quote, as an accomplished drama student who hurled profanities at the investigator at a furious pace. Our investigation had discovered at least one of her websites, and I am enclosing some examples. The site goes on to detail, including photos, her apparent fascination with marijuana. Dershowitz wrote in an undated letter to our police chief here, and he also disputed the claim that one of the defense team's private investigators misrepresented himself as a police officer. Just to discredit these young girls, just to discredit them. And then they arrive at a plea deal that absolves any co-conspirators, anybody not named, and they're never named. Now he's on the TV defending Donald Trump. Now, the whole, it's just such a weird cabal of people who cover up crimes. And, everybody likes to talk about projection, right? How Donald Trump projects, and how anything Donald Trump says that you're doing, or that they're doing, or that Seth Rich did, or that, this guy is stuff he's doing. The whole thing is it's shockingly creepy. Now, I got to tell you, Randy Credico, as you know, is a known person to me. He sat down for an interview, and he was talking about Roger Stone and what Roger Stone is really like, and who inspired Roger Stone to be Roger Stone, and how this whole Black Manafort, Stone, and Kelly law firm, lobby shop, who inspired him to be a dirty trickster along with Lee Atwater at that same firm?
His godfather was, I guess it was his godfather, or at least his guru was Roy Cohen, who was a very close friend of Trump. And he was a dirty trickster himself. Roy Cohen, one of these responsible for the Rosenbergs being executed, was a bad guy. He worked with Joe McCarthy. The drug law thing, and he continued with it in some way, Stone. because, like I said, he's a libertarian when it comes to drugs, and it's probably something personal for him.
Okay, let me stop it there and explain why that's a subject for Randi Credico. Randi Credico, for years and years and years, has been politically active. In fact, he's a political stand-up comic, and he does really great impressions, like he does a Ronald Reagan, and he does a Bill Clinton. He's talented. Okay, he's a little crazy, but he's talented. So Randi Credico has always been political, always, and that's how I know him. I know him from the Air America stand-up comedy circuit, where they adopted me. I wanted to, MC these shows. I wanted to be around these guys. They were really, really brilliant. Barry Crimmins and Randi Credico. There's a Whitney Brown from Saturday Night Live. This was a group that took me in when I moved to New York, because I didn't have a family there. I didn't have friends there. I was the only radio person there. Everybody else was a star. Everybody else was famous, okay? And that's not a slight against them. It's just the truth. They came from stand-up comedy. They came from movies. They came from television, right? You know the story. And so these stand-ups, they adopted me. They took me in. They gave me a place to go. And they encouraged me and told me that I was naturally, just really funny on the air. I was talented. And so I became friends with them. I learned about them, and Randi Credico was very, very, very politically active when Ronald Reagan was waging his wars in Central America, wars that we are currently paying for right now at the border, right? The overthrowing of governments in Nicaragua and in Honduras and in El Salvador, right? And Randi Credico was always on the front lines against these illegal secret wars. Also, another big interest of Randi Credico's from the very beginning of time has been the Rockefeller drug laws, the mandatory minimum sentences, the disparate sentence between powder cocaine and crack cocaine, right? And Randi Credico has always fought against the Rockefeller drug laws, and apparently so did Roger Stone. And that's how Credico got to know Roger Stone back in the day, fighting against the Rockefeller drug laws. All right?
What do you mean? He calls everybody a cokehead, an alcoholic when he's mad. He calls everybody drug. I can tell you, he should not be saying that. All right? He's the last person that should be talking about those who use powder. All right? I mean, when I was around him in 2002, the first time he said, stop doing that. Maybe do something that's a little, that lasts longer, that's just as white. And, he's calling everybody, when he gets mad at them, anybody drops a dime on him, exposes him. Me, I'm a drug addict and alcoholic. I mean, this guy tweeted out that I was dead from an OD in 2011. He actually said that on Twitter and on Facebook in a blast email, and it nearly destroyed my, didn't destroy my life, but really made my life very difficult.
When did you find out that he was a rat fucker and completely untrustworthy? At that point?
At that point, yeah, I did. What he did there was really nasty. And now I really knew what happened in 2007, what a rat son of a bitch this guy is. He's a real vile guy. Somebody had called up Governor Spitzer's father in 2007, called him up. He's 85 years old. He's got like MS or something. At 3 a.m, left a message saying, you're a rat son of a bitch. Your son is going to jail. The sergeant at arms is going to get him in the Senate, and there's not a fucking thing you can do about it, you piece of shit. And that's a nice version of what he said. So Stone, it was on an answering machine, but this is 3 o'clock in the morning when he's doing it, when he's all cranked up. And the next day when it was revealed that this happened, he was working with the state Republican Party Senate re-election campaign. He was their finance chairman. He was their strategist, making $30,000 a month for Joe Bruno. And so he got fired. So he finally comes up with this Hail Mary. Randi Credico, the impressionist, he mimicked me. He did an impression of me, and he spoofed my number. The number came up, his phone number came up.
So this wasn't the first time that he's thrown you under the bus?
No, so he said it was me. And he even told me, he says, look, can't you just go along with this? I'm going to lose my $30,000 a month job. I said, no.
projection. This is their MO. This is the first thing that they do. Whatever they're doing, they find somebody else to say, to point at and say they're doing it. So if Stone is saying to Randy Credico, you're a cokehead, it's because Randy Credico says Stone is cranked up out of his mind at 3 o'clock in the morning and making crank calls to 85-year-old fathers of New York governors who are in trouble because they've hired prostitutes, right? And so Stone is on the phone doing that kind of stuff and blaming Randy Credico for doing it, right? Or blaming Randy Credico, saying he's the cokehead. Same thing with, they're leaking documents. WikiLeaks is leaking documents, right? And so they go, oh no, it's Seth Rich at the DNC. It was a guy inside the DNC that leaked the documents. So they'll stop looking at them and WikiLeaks leaking the documents. I mean, this is so, Donald Trump, lock her up. She has broken the law. She used an unauthorized email, and he's talking on an iPhone, an unsecured iPhone all over the world where China can hear everything he say. Russia is tapping his phone. Ivanka is sending emails on yahoo.com, and she says, oh, well, it's different. It's different because all I was doing was scheduling or some such thing. Everything that they do, somebody else is doing it to deflect attention away from their doing it. And I got to tell you, just the fact that we have Donald Trump on tape saying he likes to inspect 15-year-old girls, and the 15-year-old girl said, yes, he did. He came into the dressing room and he would inspect us and line us up like pieces of meat because he owned the Miss Teen USA pageant and there was nothing we could do. And, I never did that. But there's millions of tapes of him saying that he did. Or he gets on the stand and he points at the women who are now 30 years older from when they were, people that he would grab. And now we find out Michael Cohen was paying off Stormy Daniels. Michael Cohen was paying off, Karen McDougal to keep them quiet, to shut them up, to intimidate them, to threaten them that Donald Trump sent a thug out to Stormy Daniels. She was going to the gym one day and her little baby is in the car. And he says, Donald Trump says, you better take a good long look at your baby, before you say anything. It's just amazing. It's the mob, and they just this media operation they got going. Holy crap! Rick in Oregon.
Hi, Randy.
Hey.
Talking about Randy Credico, he was on Flashpoints with Dennis Bernstein on Wednesday with Craig Murray, and they were saying that Guardian article was falsified, that it wasn't true, that Manafort never met with Julian Assange. What do you think about that?
Well, I didn't hear it. So, how would Randy know Paul Manafort?
I don't know.
I don't either.
But he and Craig.
Are you
Murray
sure he said it was Manafort and not Roger? Because I think Randy has said that Roger never met Julian Assange, and that's true. But what we know is that Roger was direct messaging the Russian intelligence agent who was using the handle Guccifer 2.0. So are you sure he said Manafort?
Yeah, they were saying that.
How does he know Manafort? Did he explain how he?
They were saying that the list of the visitors to see Julian Assange is available there, and it's held by the security there at the.
So how would Randy see it?
Well, I think it was Craig Murray was saying it, and I don't know, I can't remember exactly what Randy Credico said about it, but they were both being interviewed.
Okay, so here's something I really hate, and I think every listener knows this. When you hear something on another show that obviously I can't listen to because I'm doing show prep while those shows are airing, like my friends in media, and they are my friends, I can't listen to their shows because I'm prepping my show. It puts me at this unbelievable disadvantage because I haven't heard it. So the best thing to do would be to send me a link to what you heard, and I can look at it or listen to it while I'm prepping my show the day before or the morning of a show, And then I can ask for permission to play that clip, and then we could discuss it. Because anything you hear on anybody else's show, I've not heard.
Yeah.
And I hate that. Because if you tell me something you read in a newspaper, no problem. I read all of them. But I can't listen to everybody else's show because I'm prepping my show. And it's not that I don't like their show or I don't like them. I mean, a lot of them are my friends, my close friends, my personal friends who I like and love. But I can't listen to their shows because I'm prepping mine.
Do you know anything about the reporters who wrote that article in The Guardian? They were reporting from Venezuela.
Luke Harding? That's who wrote it.
There were two of them. I forget.
No, there's one guy who works for The Guardian. He wrote it, and he stands by his reporting. And people are trying to, denigrate him. But he stands by, and so does The Guardian stand by their reporting. And, until it's debunked, it's there. It's the story. That's what he's saying. That Paul Manafort went in March of 2016 to the Ecuadorian embassy in London, and that he had been there before. He had been there in 2013, 2015, and 2016. And that in March, he was there in 2016, and then the next month, he was hired by the Trump campaign. That's the story.
Well, all this lying gets pretty deep, doesn't it?
It's so bizarre that we would be in this position. It's so strange that up is down and black is white, and that we have fake news that is faux news, which is a vowel movement away from what it does to the news. F-O-X, it F-U-X's the news. And it's crazy.